Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about our top backpacking stove picks of the season. So if you're in the market for a backpacking stove and can't quite decide which one is right for you, hopefully this video can help you out. So lucky for you, we've spent all season evaluating all types of backpacking stoves for factors like weight, price, functionality, packability, just a whole host of factors in all different kinds of conditions. And we've pulled together our list of our favorite backpacking stoves of the season, and hopefully this will help you choose which one's right for you. Throughout the video, if one of these backpacking stoves catches your eye and you want to learn more about it, be sure to check out the in-depth review videos, and you can find the links in the description below. All right, so this is our backpacking stove category, and backpacking stoves are just stoves that you can cook on that are light enough and packable enough to take on a backpacking trip. With that being said, you don't have to be backpacking to use them. You can use them when you're car camping, front country, back country. Doesn't really matter, but you get the idea. Within the larger, broader category of backpacking stoves, we have three different types, and we'll break those down based on the type of fuel that they burn. So we'll start with our liquid fuel stoves. Liquid fuel stoves, more commonly in the US, will usually burn white gas. But with that being said, many of them can use other types of liquid fuels like gasoline, diesel fuel, jet fuel in some cases. Pretty crazy, pretty versatile. So moving on, we have our canister stove category. Canister stoves run on a canister of isobutane. These are probably the most common stoves that I see when I'm backpacking in the US. Our third category is our wood burning stove category. That's right, we have a stove that burns wood, small enough to backpack with, depending on who you are, and we'll get to that later. So before you start looking at backpacking stoves, you should ask yourself some really important questions. What are you going to use it for? Lightweight solo trips, high altitude, four-season camping, or are you just going to be camping in the summer? Do you just want a jet boil or something that can boil water quickly for coffee, tea, dehydrated meals? Do you want something with really dialed in simmer control so you can make more elaborate dishes in the backcountry? You really need to decide what you want out of a stove before you purchase one. For our first backpacking stove, we're going to talk about the smallest backpacking stove I've ever seen. Broken down, it literally fits in the palm of your hand, and that is the BRS 3000T. Before we started our search on this category, I actually didn't know that this little guy existed, and I'm really glad that it does. I just can't believe it's this small, and it actually works. We're going to say this is best for only the ultralight minimalist camper. I mean, I'm talking about through hikers that are really counting grams, the type of people who saw the end of their toothbrush off to save a gram or two. That's who I think wants this stove. I'd say it's probably a little more minimalist than most people want, but it's still a really cool little stove. This is a tiny canister stove. That means, again, that it runs on isobutane. 3 pot supports. The pot supports are built in, just meaning that they're attached. You can't unattach them. And they do fold down. So with this being the smallest canister stove in the category, it doesn't come with any bells and whistles. Very stripped down. It has a burner and a pot support. You won't find a micro regulator on this, and you won't really be able to get much of a simmer. But here's the kick. This thing retails for $16.95, and finding a piece of any outdoor gear in any category for under 20 bucks that actually works, I think is a pretty cool invention, and I think there's definitely a market for it. It weighs less than an ounce. 1/10 of an ounce less than an ounce, but still less than an ounce nonetheless. It weighs 0.9 ounces or 25 grams. Just insanely light. I'd say what it's great at is saving space in your pack, saving grams in your pack, really just saving weight and space. I'd say the things that it excels at sort of end there. In terms of its weakness, it doesn't function well if there's a breeze. We did our boil test, there was a slight breeze, and the temperature was in the 30s, so not super warm. But after 15 minutes, we didn't get a boil. It also uses a lot of fuel because it doesn't have a windscreen. So, you know, not all positives, not all negatives. Still a really cool stove nonetheless. And just a quick reminder, if you want to learn more about the BRS 3000T, click the link to our full video review in the description below. So next on the list, we're going to cover the Soto WindMaster. The Soto WindMaster is going to be best for, again, solo minimalist hikers, perhaps minimalist pairs of hikers. Still pretty stripped down compared to a lot of the other options on the table, but also delivers a surprising amount of functionality. The Soto WindMaster often tops people's lists for their favorite stoves. There's a lot of hype around these right now. And that's due in part to the concave burner shape. This concave burner shape is what gives it its name, the WindMaster. It protects it from the wind and keeps a nice flame on the pot, even in breezy conditions. Some other nice features of this stove are the igniter, the built-in igniter, and it also has a micro regulator. So you're going to be able to use this stove in colder conditions and at higher altitudes, which is a really nice touch. It comes standard with its Flex 4 pot holder stand, and this is removable, so you can stash it in a different pocket. You can toss it to your trail buddy if you don't feel like carrying it. Like the BRS 3000T, this is a canister stove. It runs on a canister of isobutane. Using a larger canister like this will give it added stability because the nature of stands like these, they're just not as stable as some of the larger stoves. Nature of the beast, I guess. So the Soto WindMaster delivers surprising functionality for a good price. $64.95 for a backpacking stove with a micro regulator and a built-in igniter, and feels like a well-built stove overall. It is a win in my book. If it had a weakness, I would say that if you use a smaller canister of isobutane, these do tend to be somewhat unstable. They just get a little top heavy, and if you start to hit a roaring boil, just make sure you're close to your pot and you can grab it quickly. So next on the list, we're going to move to the MSR PocketRocket Deluxe. If you're familiar with MSR's original PocketRocket, this is an updated version of that stove. At first glance, looks pretty basic, but much like the Soto WindMaster, it has a lot of hidden features that make it a really cool stove. I think, again, this is going to be best for minimalist solo hikers, perhaps minimalist pairs. Does come with a micro regulator, and it also comes with a nice igniter, a really reliable igniter, I might add. Throughout our testing, it fired up on the first or second click every single time, and if you're familiar with the igniters on these canister stoves, they don't always work as well as you might hope. So this stove comes with 3 built-in pot stands, and they're collapsible. You just fold them that way, fold them down, fold them up, fold them up. I actually prefer the pot stands being attached to the stove because opposed to the Soto WindMaster, it just feels a little more sturdy. This just feels like a well-made stove. So this stove is going to ring up for $79.95. It only weighs 2.9 ounces, that's 83 grams. Works really well for boiling water. It's going to be best for people looking to boil water for dehydrated meals, coffee, tea, and such. Like the Soto WindMaster, it has a concave burner, and that really protects it from the wind. In our wind tests, this stove actually outperformed the Soto WindMaster. So for the price, I think you get a really nice stove. Again, micro regulator, so good in colder temperatures as well as higher altitudes. It simmers really well, so for those looking to expand their backcountry culinary skills, this could be a good option for you. If you want to learn more about the MSR PocketRocket Deluxe, check out our full in-depth review video. The link is in the description below. So rounding out our canister stove category is the Jetboil Zip. The Jetboil Zip, if you're familiar with the Jetboil platform at all, is basically a slightly stripped down version of the Jetboil Flash. This stove is going to be best and really only good for boiling water. So if you want a stove that quickly and efficiently boils water for dehydrated meals, hot drinks, this could be the stove for you. So the Jetboil Zip retails for $87.95. It's definitely the heaviest stove in our canister stove category at 12 ounces or 343 grams. So significantly heavier, but it also comes with more bells and whistles than you get from the more stripped down canister stoves. So the Jetboil Zip is a self-contained canister stove system. So whereas these 3 canister stoves don't come with any cookware, this comes with pretty much everything you need to toss in your pack and hit the trail. So let's start with the pot. Everything fits in the pot. The lid to the pot has strainer holes as well as a hole to drink through. Always nice. Comes with a fuel stabilizer. And then this is the classic Jetboil burner unit. On the bottom you have a measuring cup or something to drink out of if you want. And as you can see, the burner just attaches to the bottom, and then you have your entire setup. And it all fits right back in here with a small canister of isobutane, which is really great. So I think this is a popular choice for a lot of people just because you can buy one thing and you have everything you need. If you want to learn more about the Jetboil Zip, check out our full in-depth video review, and you can check the link in the description below. All right, moving on to our liquid fuel stove category. So as I mentioned in the intro, these 2 stoves burn liquid fuel. In the US, that's usually going to be white gas. They can also burn kerosene, unleaded auto fuel, diesel fuel, aviation fuel, really versatile stoves. And these stoves are great for people who travel outside the United States and maybe in conditions where white gas or isobutane isn't even available. Liquid fuel stoves are also better in certain conditions. So they definitely function better at high altitudes and in cold conditions. So if you think you're going to be at high altitude or maybe doing 4-season camping, definitely give liquid fuel stoves a look. I think they're a little less popular than the isobutane stoves, but they're really cool. So let's start with MSR's XKG EX Expedition Stove. First things first, this stove's built like a tank. This is going to be for like hardcore adventurers, people who are bivvying on the side of a mountain, need something to melt snow quick. This is going to be overkill for most people, but it's a rock solid stove. I mean, this stove's been around a long time. The design's changed a little bit, but the idea is the same. This is just an incredible, well-built expedition stove. It's definitely the most expensive stove in the category at $189.95. It's also not super light, 13.2 ounces, 375 grams, but this is a stove that's going to last a long time. I think, again, it's best for pretty hardcore adventurers, people camping in extreme conditions, cold weather, high altitude. It's best for melting snow, burns a ton of fuel, all different kinds of liquid fuel. Just a really all-around great stove. I'd say if it has one weakness, it's that it's just overkill for most people. I think for the average backpacker, even 4-season camper in the mountains in the United States or continental United States, this might be more than you need. But yeah, overall, great stove. If you want to learn more about MSR's XKG EX Expedition Stove, check out our full-length video review, and you can find the link in the description below. All right, to round out our liquid fuel stove category, we have another stove by MSR, and at first glance, they look really similar. This is the MSR Dragonfly, and it's another liquid fuel stove, meaning that it can run on all types of liquid fuel, white gas in the United States, gasoline, diesel fuel, kerosene, unleaded, all unleaded auto fuels, and possibly even aviation fuel, if it comes to that. I think for liquid fuel stoves, this is a much more well-rounded stove than MSR's Expedition Stove, and I only say that because it's designed for people who really want to cook. It's very stable on the table with these wide pot supports. It also has 2 different fuel controls, and that really helps dial in the simmer. So depending on what you're cooking, I mean, you can use a fairly large skillet and cook a pretty elaborate meal on this stove without burning it. And I think that's why I like it so much. I think for people who really want to cook in the backcountry, this is just an excellent stove. I'd say this stove is for people backpacking in larger groups, or people who just like to cook in the backcountry and want to do more than just boil water. Although I will say this stove can melt snow and boil water really efficiently. So this is going to cost a little less than the Expedition stove. This stove is $169.95. It's a little heavier at 14.1 ounces or 400 grams, and that's why you usually would want to use a stove like this with a larger group, because you can break parts out and disperse them among the members in your party. I know guides use these a lot when they're cooking for groups. So again, this is just a really well-built, stable, versatile stove that you can really dial in your cooking skills on. Boils water, melts snow. Just an overall really great stove. If I had to pick a negative on this one, it would just be that it's heavy. It's definitely on the heavier side. Takes up a little more space in your pack, although it does break down really well. Yeah, great stove overall. If you want to learn more about the MSR Dragonfly, make sure to check out our full-length video review, and you can find a link to that video in the description below. Alright, so last but not least is the final stove in our backpacking stove category, the Biolite Campstove 2 Plus. And we saved this for last because it's the only stove in the category that burns wood for fuel. It's also the largest stove in the category and has the most bells and whistles of any stove in the category. And I would say it's the most unique stove in the category. It's just a really cool stove. It's packed full of features. So let's start with price. Retails for $149.95. And for that price, you're going to get a ton of features that you probably never expected to get with a backpacking stove. It's heavy. It's just over 2 pounds, 935 grams. This stove is great for generating heat. I'd say this is more for the front country camper or the backcountry camper that doesn't want to carry fuel, still wants to be able to cook, wants to have to be able to generate their own power in the backcountry. But it's heavy, so it would be best for those in pairs. Maybe you could break the stove apart into pieces and share the weight. That's what I would recommend. So yeah, let's talk about the features really quick. This stove turns its heat, the heat it's generating, into actual usable power, and it does that by charging this battery pack that's attached to the side. So you make a fire out of wood, it spins the fan, charges the battery pack, and the battery pack runs the fan, and that can adjust the heat. That's how you adjust if you're cooking. If you want to dial down the heat, you would turn down the fan. If you really want to crank it up, you're trying to boil water, you turn the fan all the way up. This battery pack is removable, and it also runs this camp light. So if you need a little light around camp when you're cooking at night, it's just a really, really cool feature, and you can bend this light all over the place. We just love the ingenuity, the eco-mindedness of being able to burn the wood, but turn the wood into energy, but also generate heat at camp. It's just a really well thought out kind of cool stove. In terms of what we don't like about this stove, it's just simply the size and weight. It's the largest stove in the category, the heaviest stove in the category, and I think most people, when they're backpacking, will find this just simply too large to want to bring along. If you want to learn more about Biolite's Campstove 2 Plus, we've done a full in-depth video review, and you can find the link to that video review in the description below. All right, there you have it, and that concludes our video for the top backpacking stoves of the season. Just a reminder that we've done reviews, in-depth video reviews of all of these stoves. If you want to find those videos, visit the links in the description below. It'll really help you make the decision on which stove is right for you. Happy hiking. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you don't know what gear to bring hiking, or maybe you've just wasted money on the wrong gear in the past, then you definitely need to get a copy of this book. It's called The Beginner's Guide to Hiking Gear, and we've created it with the total beginner in mind. It'll help you learn what gear you need versus what gear is just nice to have versus what gear you don't need. It covers everything you need to know, including how to choose each item and specific product recommendations based on your budget, gender, hiking destination, and more. You can pick it up on Amazon, and it's available in paperback and for the Kindle. Check out the link in the description below. Happy hiking!